My mill stole my collection of vintage skeleton keys to sell at a pawn shop and buy herself a new phone, but I reported her to the popo, so now she has to buy her way out of jail. Posted by you/my keys were stolen. My mother-in-law is insanely entitled, and my wife's enabling of her has made our marriage very difficult at times. My mother-in-law has come to us for money frequently because she keeps spending herself into debt, as she's a hoarder and a shopaholic. Her house is full of garbage, junk, and unopened items she never uses. The house is also rodent infested. She has one semi-clean room in the whole house, which is the master bedroom. She set it up like a small studio apartment with a futon to sleep on and use as a couch, an entertainment center with a TV and streaming services, and a makeshift kitchen consisting of the adjoining bathroom, a mini fridge, and a microwave. My mother-in-law is also overweight because she eats out frequently. Recently, my mother-in-law came to us, specifically wanting me to buy her a new smartphone as an unprompted gift. She threw a massive fit when I refused, and I mean a full-blown childlike temper tantrum. Why did she want a new phone so suddenly? Hers was only 2 years old, that's literally it. As far as I know, it still worked fine, and even my wife has confirmed this. But my mother-in-law was adamant that she deserved a new phone. Before leaving, she yelled at us, saying we're supposed to be pampering her now that she's an old woman. She's 53. My wife also didn't want to buy her mother the phone because she had given her money not long ago to ensure her bills were paid. I have quite a collection of vintage skeleton keys, and I mean good ones. For example, keys from particular hotels, large ornate sergeants, brass railroad keys, reading hardware, etc. My collection as a whole should easily be worth $2,000 to $3,000. Some of those keys are extremely rare. I kept them in a locked display cabinet, but a few days ago, I came home to find my entire collection gone. The cabinet had been forced open. I checked the CCTV for the living room and saw my mother-in-law forcing open the cabinet with a small crowbar. She then placed all the keys in a couple of boxes she had brought with her and left. I immediately called my mother-in-law and demanded that she return my collection. She nonchalantly told me that she had already sold the entire collection at a pawn shop and used the money to buy her new phone. Then she said it was my fault and that she had to do it because I wouldn't give her the money. My wife was seemingly on my side until I said I was going to call the police. She begged me to drop it and even suggested I just start a new collection. I refused to let it go because many of those keys are not only expensive, but they're also irreplaceable. I spent 10 years building that collection. However, my wife kept blowing up at me, telling me to just let it go. Would I be wrong if I went to the police? Update 5 days later. Thank you everybody for the comments and advice. It finally made me realize that I was the only one keeping my marriage afloat, and it would likely never get any better if my wife wasn't on my side, even when her own mother stole something irreplaceable from me. This is going to be long, so TLDR, my mother-in-law got arrested, I got my keys back, and I'm divorcing my wife. To answer some quick questions I've received before getting into the nitty-gritty. 1. How did my mother-in-law get into the house? My wife unilaterally gave her a key when we moved in, that's why. 2. Why did I have CCTV cameras in the living room? Really? Wouldn't you, if you had something valuable on display there? 3. Is my mother-in-law on substances? No idea, she's always been crazy. 4. Did my mother-in-law steal from us before? Not that I've been able to tell, and I've checked everything I could think of. 5. What kind of phone did my mother-in-law get? I have no clue, but probably one of the cheaper smartphones given the amount of money she got from selling my stuff, unless she's on a payment plan. 6. Did my wife use my money to placate her mother before? Yes, she did. We primarily have separate accounts, but we also have a joint account for bills, which isn't used for savings. In 2 years of marriage, I'd say this happened about 5 times. Each time my wife took money from the joint account for her mother, she replaced it on her next payday. Though in hindsight, I think she only did so because she knew I wouldn't let it go. She'd always have an attitude with me for a few days after. I was in a bad marriage fog before, but this situation snapped me out of it. 7. Will I lock down my credit? I already have. Though I doubt my wife or her mother would be so foolish to try something like that, especially after my mother-in-law was recently arrested. Now, back to what happened that day. The police arrived and took my statement a little over an hour after I called the non-emergency line. I had the video footage and documentation of my collection ready. I also had texts that I had purposely obtained from my mother-in-law to bait her into a confession. I wanted to gather as much evidence as possible so she couldn't lie to the police. When I texted her, demanding she return my collection, she actually said LOL and told me there was no chance. She even boasted that she thought I was a pathetic son-in-law and that my key collection was tacky anyway. I asked her to at least tell me which pawn shop she sold the keys to so I could try to buy them back and how much they paid her. The dimwit admitted it all with glee in the texts. By the time the police arrived, I had everything I needed to back up my case. The cops took the matter more seriously than I expected. I was worried they might call it a civil matter since the thief was my mother-in-law and she had a key to the house. However, they arrested her not long after. The police even went to the pawn shop before it closed to retrieve my collection. I got everything back from the police after a couple of days. For now, I've placed the collection in a safe, secure location that no one can access. The pawn shop gave up the entire key collection to the police right away, like it was a bag of hot potatoes. I scrutinized every important key that was returned, and as far as I can tell, everything is there. That was a huge relief. I took time off work and barely slept for 2 days because of this ordeal. As for the cabinet my mother-in-law broke into, it's pretty much a total loss. She mangled the lock and doors while prying it open. Thankfully, it wasn't an antique, just something I got used for $50, so I'm planning to take it to the dump eventually. From her texts, I found out my mother-in-law sold the entire collection to the pawn shop for a whopping $300. For a collection of hundreds of antique keys valued at $2 to $3 grand, that low number felt like a punch in the gut. The pawnbroker likely knew the collection could be worth much more as a whole. It's not exactly hitting the jackpot, but money is still money, especially when a clueless little lady walks in with a box of valuables. Anyway, the repayment to the pawn shop was supposed to be my mother-in-law's responsibility, but my wife ended up covering it with money from our joint account. According to the shop owner, my mother-in-law told them the key collection belonged to her deceased husband and that she was tired of it sitting in storage. So, they believed her. Just to be clear, though, she's not a widow, her husband divorced her and left the state about 15 years ago. My mother-in-law lives off Social Security and food stamps, and she also holds garage sales every few months. She often demands our soda and beer cans so she can get the deposit money by recycling them. She doesn't drive, but gets around on an electric scooter that tows a bicycle trailer. She lives in a house that's long been paid off and wouldn't have money problems if she didn't overspend every month. And, of course, she always relies on my wife to pick up the slack when she falls short. My wife and I got into a huge fight when she got home because I had her mother arrested. I told her I was done with her enabling her toxic mother. I said I would change the locks immediately and ban her mother from the house. I also told her that either we get marriage counseling, or I'd be inquiring about my options for separation with an attorney. I thought my wife would beg me not to go through with it, but instead, she called me horrible, packed a suitcase, and walked out to stay at a motel. I just sat on the couch and let her go. She kept looking back like she was waiting for me to ask her to stay, but I didn't. In the morning, she texted me saying she'd be bailing her mother out and wanted me to transfer her the money since I was the one who got her mother arrested. When I said no, she replied with a sarcastic, "Wow," and that was it. Not long after, I had a gut feeling and checked the balance on our shared bank account. My wife had taken out a significant amount of money. I wasn't sure if all that money was needed for bail, so I called the pawn shop later. The owner confirmed that my wife had come in and paid him back the $300 her mother received for the keys. He was also quite angry and made it clear he didn't want any of us in his shop ever again. I understood his frustration, and oddly enough, we ended up having a fairly long conversation. By the end, he understood that I wasn't part of the craziness. I tried to call and text my wife for hours, but she didn't respond. That evening, I managed to find her. I knew which motel she'd likely go to, and I was right, it was cheap and not far away. I found her car and figured out which room she was in. When she opened the door, she looked shocked to see me. I confronted her about the money she had taken from our shared account. She basically said that since I refused to pay her mother's bail after getting her arrested, she got the money from me another way. Then, with a smug attitude, she told me she wasn't paying that money back into the shared account this time and said it was my karma for getting her mother arrested, before shutting the door in my face. She even said through the door that she'd call the cops on me if I didn't leave. The smug look she gave me reminded me of nasty teenage girls when they get their way, and it really ticked me off. I already knew my marriage was pretty much over, but that night it really sank in. I had a long sit down with some old video games and a cola to reflect on my future. Since the house is rented, I've decided not to renew my half of the lease and will soon start apartment hunting. The lease runs until the end of March, but I may leave sooner depending on how quickly I can find a new place. Thankfully, we don't have any kids, which is one thing I have in my favor right now. The next day, I changed the locks on the house, removed all of my money from the joint bank account, and stopped all automated payments to and from it. I made sure to take only the amount I had contributed, leaving more than enough in the account for me to break even and still maintain the minimum required balance. Now, the cost of my mother-in-law's bail and paying back the pawn shop is entirely out of my wife's pocket. I don't think she's noticed yet, but it probably won't be long before she does. I've already been to a couple of divorce lawyers and decided to go with the second one, since the first seemed more interested in a paycheck than helping me. I'll be serving the divorce papers soon. I loved my wife, but it's clear she didn't love me, and I can't stay with her anymore. She can have her thieving, hoarder mother all to herself. We both have comparable incomes, so I'm pushing for a clean split divorce. This woman didn't deserve me, and I fell for her act. She didn't want a husband, she wanted an insurance plan. I will also pursue any charges still possible against her mother. I'll update when more happens, but I want to be clear, I'm not changing my mind. My soon-to-be ex-wife can beg and love bomb all she wants, if she even bothers, but I've never been her priority. I'm not settling for being second place in my own marriage. It is over. Edit. Yes, I asked the landlord for permission to change the locks, and he was all for it once I explained what had happened. All I had to do was mail him a copy of the new key. He definitely doesn't want my mother-in-law to ever have access to the house again. Second update 10 days later. Just because I find it humorous, I'll be referring to my wife as wifey a lot from now on. It didn't take me long to find and hire a divorce lawyer. She asked me a couple of times if I was sure I wanted to go through with the divorce. But after explaining my full story to her and showing some evidence, she agreed that I should start the process ASAP. So, she got the ball rolling. This divorce is definitely going to cost me, but I don't care. I'll rebuild my savings later as a free man. I never even wanted to rent the house I'm living in now, wifey pushed for that. I'd have been perfectly happy staying in the old apartment we used to share until we could actually afford to buy a house together. But that's obviously never happening. Once we separate, I'll be paying a lot less for an apartment. Before coming home, wifey had spent some time at a cheap motel after bailing her mother out of jail. She even threatened to call the police on me when I went to see her there. While she was away, I changed the locks with my landlord's permission and sent her a text letting her know. But I guess she didn't bother to read it because she never responded. When she finally came home, she started pounding on the door and screaming at me to let her in. I just watched her through the doorbell cam and let her go at it for a while until she eventually got on her phone to call me. I was already walking home from having dinner with my best friend when she called, so I pointed out the text she hadn't read. When I got home to let her in, she looked puffy-cheeked, teary-eyed, and red-faced. I handed her a new key and told her that if she gave a copy to her mother again, I'd be notifying our landlord. They were already very upset that she had given her mother a key in the first place. I wasn't sure what the landlord could have done, but it was enough to get wifey to comply for the time being. Plus, I'm not planning to live here much longer anyway. My mother-in-law still refuses to believe she did anything wrong and plays the victim to wifey every chance she gets. She's no longer allowed over for obvious reasons, but both she and wifey have been calling me a monster repeatedly. I'm just glad my mother-in-law doesn't have any friends, otherwise, she'd definitely be spreading her twisted version of the story to paint me as the villain. She was told the rough value of my key collection and the kind of felony charges she might face. Even though my collection was returned intact, she could still be looking at legal consequences, although the charges might get reduced. I'd like to hope she gets a decent punishment, but I'm not counting on the system to throw the book at a manipulative person like her. As I mentioned in my previous post, wifey paid her mother's bail and reimbursed the pawn shop with money from our joint bank account, then smugly told me she wouldn't be putting the money back. It was a terrible power move, her way of trying to stick all the costs on me. Since then, I removed everything I had in that account and stopped all future payments so she couldn't spend my money too. I've also changed my passwords to pretty much everything. When wifey finally checked the account a couple of days ago, she flipped out because it meant that what she paid for her mother's bail and reimbursing the pawn shop was coming out of her money only. She no longer had access to my funds to supplement her own. I just ignored her tantrum, went into the home office, and watched anime on my computer. She banged on the door for a while, demanding I talk to her, but I stayed quiet and put on my headphones. Wifey has repeatedly demanded that I drop all charges against her mother, even going as far as to say that if I really loved her, I'd not only stop everything but also cover the costs. When I kept refusing, she moved into the spare bedroom. Initially, she tried to kick me out of the master bedroom, but I made it clear I wasn't giving it up when she was the one at fault. She even tried taking my things out, but I blocked her and, pointing my finger like I was talking to a dog, firmly said, "No." She ended up crying, accusing me of demeaning her, but I didn't care. Then, out of pure spite, she admitted that until this mess started, she'd been planning to move her mother into the house full-time soon because of the state of her hoarder home. She even boasted that she was going to do it while I was at work. I told her that we were supposed to be equal partners before all this, and I was tired of her making decisions on her own. As long as I'm paying 50% of the lease, her mother will not be living here. I made it clear that if she tried to move her mother in, I'd throw all her stuff out immediately. Wifey looked like she was about to explode and stormed off to the kitchen to have a drink and a loud phone call with her mother. Meanwhile, I started removing her things from the master bedroom and put them in the other room for her. I've also installed a new lock on the master bedroom door. I had wifey served with divorce papers at her job, and she told me it really embarrassed her in front of her colleagues. When she got home, she flipped out again, apparently not taking my threats of divorce seriously until the papers were actually in her hands. She said I couldn't do this, but I told her I was done. She'd made it more than clear where she stands. I told her I learned an interesting phrase online: when people show you who they really are, believe them. And she's clearly shown me who she really is, and it's not the woman I fell in love with. That woman disappeared and was replaced by an entitled mommy's girl who refuses to act her age, especially after we got married. It's pretty obvious now that she did that intentionally. At this point, I don't think she ever loved me, just my wallet. I told her I can't stay married to someone who conned me into this. She started screaming that she wasn't a gold digger, so I asked if she would have stayed married to me if I had done all the same things to her. She tried to deny it at first, but then hesitated, looking around as if searching for a better answer. Finally, she resorted to her usual gaslighting to deflect, but I wasn't having any of it this time. I told her right then and there that I'm not renewing the lease on the house because I don't want to live with a petulant woman-child I can't trust. I even said that if she wants to keep the house, she's welcome to start a new lease and move her mother in once I'm gone. That's when the real waterworks started. She claimed I was destroying our family, and I fired back with, "What family?" I pointed out that we don't have kids, and her mother is more important to her than I am. We have no family. After that, I just walked away. She cried loudly in the living room for hours, but I ignored her. Now, she's giving me the hardcore silent treatment and refuses to look me in the eye. Honestly, I'm actually enjoying it, which seems to make her even angrier. As an added bonus, I warned my landlord about wifey's plans to move her mother in. I gave him all the details about my mother-in-law, the state of her hoarder house, and how wifey is a deceptive mommy's girl. I made it clear that if he allowed my mother-in-law to live in any of his properties, she would turn it into a disaster. The landlord thanked me for the heads up and told me he won't let wifey renew the lease on her own if she tries. He plans to advertise the property soon. Wifey has no idea yet, and she likely would have only just barely been able to afford the place with her mother's help anyway. Yesterday, someone advised me to remove my name from the joint bank account to avoid being responsible for any overdraft. I took their advice and went to the bank to get it done. I also made sure to print all statements from the account and hand them over to my lawyer, so I can wash my hands of it completely. Edit. I'm not sure if it's the same everywhere, but the bank had no problem removing my name as a cosigner when I pushed for it. The account had no debts and well above the minimum balance. The bank probably informed wifey, but whether or not she knows, it doesn't matter since she's still not talking to me. Third update 2 weeks later. The fact that so many people here predicted this so accurately is kind of frightening, but it just proves what a stereotype wifey really is. After about a week of the silent treatment, wifey couldn't keep it up anymore and started love bombing me. She even tried to make dinner and get me drunk. While she was cooking, I told her I wasn't going to touch anything she made. For one, she's a terrible cook, and secondly, I don't trust her not to put something in the food. She made overcooked hamburgers, and I didn't touch them or the drinks she provided. The beer was already opened. She started crying, saying I was being mean for not eating her food. I coldly told her it was because I can't trust her anymore. She snapped back that it's not like she'd cheated on me or anything. I responded that she may as well have cheated, since her mother was always more important to her than me, the man she married. You can't keep a marriage together by treating your spouse as secondary. Wifey broke down crying again and tried to change the subject, begging me to stop the divorce. She said we could finally get the marriage counseling I'd wanted and promised she'd never try to have her mother live with us. I told her it was far too late for that. She had her chance, and she blew it, badly. She's already made it very clear where her priorities lie. In the past 2 years, she made no real effort to improve, only acting nicer in public. Why would I want to stay in such a toxic relationship? For once, she had to answer truthfully and admitted that she likely would have left me if I'd done the same things to her. But she still kept trying to convince me not to go through with the divorce, saying we could work things out. I couldn't listen to it anymore, so I just walked away and went into the office again. Wifey didn't stop and even tried to initiate intimacy multiple times. She tried touching me, running her fingers through my hair, and getting on her knees to entice me. But I didn't take the bait and stonewalled her attempts. She ended up gaslighting me with the "am I not good enough" line. I told her she used to be, but I just can't see her that way anymore. After I told wifey I couldn't see her that way anymore, she hit the bottle hard and ended up puking in the kitchen. At this point, I wouldn't put it past her to try and baby trap or frame me, so I've been locking the door when I sleep and even installed a hidden camera in the room. I want out of this house, but I can't leave until my new place is ready. Wifey has doubled down, sobbing and begging me not to go through with the separation and divorce, but nothing is changing my mind. I've already secured an apartment that'll be available in early to mid-March and have notified all utilities about the upcoming change. Now wifey's freaking out even more because she has to find a place for herself, but I don't really care where she ends up. I'm just glad I'll be free of this house soon. I've also made sure not to tell her where my new apartment is, and she's tried to get that information out of me 3 times already. As soon as my new apartment is ready, I'll start moving my things in. I'll be taking the bed from the guest room since I paid for it, and it'll be easier to move. It's a queen size, whereas the one in the master bedroom is a king. Wifey can keep the bulk of the furniture. She can leave it for the next tenant or sell it, I don't care anymore. The apartment I'm moving into is a 1-bedroom, and though the previous tenant left it in bad shape, it's getting remodeled. I chose this place because not only is the rent far cheaper than the house, but I'll also be much closer to my job, close enough to walk or bike to work. I haven't ridden a bike in years because wifey never wanted to, which is another thing she held me back from. So once I move, one of the first things I'm going to do is buy a bike. Edit. To clarify, wifey is the only one who's been drinking. I've avoided booze for a while now. Edit. I've received a lot of comments judging me based on this post alone. I'm not acting this way for no reason. Please read my prior post to understand what led to this. Edit. To explain the bike situation, wifey hates bikes and never wanted to ride with me, which made me gradually lose interest. Eventually, she threw out my old bike without asking me. I wasn't too mad since it was in bad shape, but I never replaced it, and that's on me. I'm still deciding what kind of bike to get, either a street MTB, a classic road bike, or a fixie. Fourth update 4 months later. I've decided I will no longer refer to my soon-to-be ex-wife as wifey, even that feels wrong now. So, from now on, I'll just refer to her as my soon-to-be ex-wife. At first, I thought nothing came of it as weeks went by, but I guess someone did look into it because my mother-in-law's house was eventually inspected. The house was found to be in even worse shape than I had imagined. It was not only a serious fire hazard to itself and everything around it and rodent infested, but there were also exposed electrical wires, a roof leak that had been left unfixed for years causing severe rot damage and black mold. The outside of the house didn't look that bad, and since it was in a neighborhood full of old houses that looked similar, no one had reported it until I did. My soon-to-be ex-wife figured out it was me who reported her mother, given the timing and everything. She came home and ranted about all the things her mother told her the inspector had found, and how her mother was likely to lose her house now. But honestly, it was only a matter of time before something like that happened. If I hadn't reported her mother, someone else eventually would have. She screamed at me, calling me a horrible, deceitful person. I calmly asked her if she wanted to be the pot or the kettle, then reminded her of all the reasons why we were separating. I ended up losing my cool and ranted at her, saying that her enabling of her mother caused this. Her acting like it wasn't important when her mother stole my irreplaceable skeleton key collection, which I'd spent a decade building, caused this. Her selfish, unilateral decision-making and bratty behavior since we got married caused this. Couples are supposed to make decisions together, but she kept making them for both of us without even asking for my input. So, for once, I made a unilateral decision of my own and reported her mother's hoarding. It needed to be reported anyway because it's a danger to both her and the people around her. I told my soon-to-be ex-wife that I was sick of constantly sucking it up, letting things slide while they acted like I was the bad guy and walked all over me. I made it clear her mother would get nothing more from me. And maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't be as crazy once she's no longer living in a house filled with the fumes of rotten garbage, rodent excrement, and black mold. My soon-to-be ex-wife just walked away, sniffling and cursing me. Yeah, I know I went too far. I'd been reduced to being just as petty as her. I made that call out of anger, but after I did it, I had no choice but to stand by my decision. My mother-in-law ended up demanding that my soon-to-be ex-wife cover the cost of cleaning and restoring the house, but she couldn't afford it. From what I've heard, my mother-in-law went off on her, telling her to find the money any way she could. She even demanded that I pay for it since I was the one who reported the house, saying my soon-to-be ex-wife should sue me. However, my soon-to-be ex-wife told her it wouldn't work. The house was in such poor shape, rotten garbage, exposed wires, roof leaks, rot, and black mold, that no one should be living in it to begin with. When my soon-to-be ex-wife tried to tell her mother that she couldn't afford to pay for the house to be cleaned and renovated, her mother attacked her like a wild animal. She hit and scratched her multiple times, even trying to pull her hair out. And then it happened, my mother-in-law had a heart attack right on the spot. Going into a rage on her daughter must have triggered it. My soon-to-be ex-wife called 911 while frantically searching for aspirin in the house, but by the time help arrived, her mother had already passed away. My soon-to-be ex-wife came home with a police officer in tow, absolutely furious and screaming at me about what had just happened to her mother. She blamed me for everything. Amidst her ranting, I found out for the first time that her mother had a weak heart, which was the real reason she was on disability. The officer had to separate my soon-to-be ex-wife from me as she collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. I hated my mother-in-law with a passion, but I never intended for anything like this to happen. I still feel a great deal of guilt over it. From what the police officer and my soon-to-be ex-wife said, I managed to piece together the full story and later typed it out, but I couldn't bring myself to post it at the time. I was too consumed by guilt and needed to take a serious break from Reddit. That evening, after finding out my mother-in-law had passed away, my soon-to-be ex-wife eventually calmed down enough to explain things more clearly to the officer. However, she kept shifting between blaming herself and blaming me. From across the room, I asked her why I was never told about her mother's heart condition. She yelled back that it was none of my damn business. But it explained a lot. The times her mother would dramatically put her hand on her chest and cry whenever she didn't get her way now made sense. My soon-to-be ex-wife ended up having a breakdown in the bathroom she'd been using since we started sleeping separately. She asked the police officer for a moment alone, then went completely crazy after shutting the door. A few minutes later, she came out looking angry but calm and told me I was cleaning up the mess she made in there. Then, she packed her bags again and left for the motel, saying she wouldn't be coming back unless it was to get her things. I was so consumed with guilt that I could barely function for days. I had to take leave from work because of stress migraines and spent 3 days on the couch, relying on meds to get by. But after that, I managed to pull myself together. My friends keep telling me it wasn't my fault, I didn't know about her mother's condition, and my mother-in-law was clearly unstable. Regardless, what's done is done, and I have to live with it. Unfortunately, there's more that happened, and I'll share that in another post. Edit. I came back to find over 200 comments in my inbox, and I want to thank everyone for the support. It's too much for me to reply to each individually, so I'll respond from here. Did I move into that apartment in March? Yes, I did. The events of this post happened before that move. Is this post fake? I wish it were, but this is the reality I've been dealing with. Am I in therapy? Yes, I am. I've been in therapy for about a month now, and it is helping. A few people were against me in the comments, and I don't blame them. Yes, my mother-in-law's heart condition was unknown to me, and I set things in motion by calling the fire marshal. I understand that hoarding is a serious mental disorder, and I do feel guilty for what happened. I'm not made of stone. But at the same time, My mother-in-law was a narcissist who thrived on walking all over me, and even her own daughter. I get that losing one's home is terrifying, but if you don't take care of it and let it become a moldy, rodent-infested den, then you've let your home down. She was only living in one room because the rest of the house was too far gone. About a week ago, I drove by the property and saw that her house had been torn down. There's nothing but an empty lot now, which makes me think it was deemed an unsalvageable biohazard. Fifth update 3 days later. Just wanted to clarify that everything I'm sharing happened months ago. I took a break from Reddit for mental health reasons, so if some things seem like they're happening quickly, it's because I'm recounting events that already occurred. I'm just posting the stories now to get them out. To those who kept telling me not to divorce, claiming that my wife loved me, you couldn't have been more wrong. I honestly couldn't tell if some of you were trolls or just naive fools. Some even brought religion into it. Let me be clear, I don't care about anyone's religious views on divorce. They're not me. They're not living my life. It's like the example of a rich man saying he knows how hard it is to pay for gas when he drives $1 million car. He can't understand the struggle of paying for gas when he has the wealth to buy such an expensive car. In the same way, people can't claim to know whether my soon-to-be ex-wife loved me just because they didn't live with her, didn't deal with her mother, and didn't suffer at their hands. So, they have no valid reason to say they knew better. My soon-to-be ex-wife pretty much admitted to my face that she only married me for financial security. So yeah, I was right all along. She spent years grooming me so she could trap me in marriage and walk all over me. And yes, she had plans to baby trap me after I initiated the divorce. I've confirmed this. After her mother died, she dropped any pretense of wanting to save the marriage. In my last post, I explained how I reported my mother-in-law's hoarding, which led to her house being inspected and scheduled for condemnation. She demanded that my soon-to-be ex-wife pay for the repairs, but when my ex said she couldn't, her mother went completely ape on her and then died from a heart attack shortly after. It turns out she had a congenital heart condition, something I didn't know about until after she passed. For years, I was told she was only on disability for mental health issues, but she actually had a weak heart. The stress of potentially losing the only home she had lived in for decades likely pushed her over the edge, and her heart gave out when she attacked her daughter for not being able to afford the repairs. I still feel guilty about what happened, but it's in the past now. My mother-in-law's house was torn down at some point, though I'm not sure when. About a week before making my previous post, I drove by, and there was nothing left but an empty lot. It was likely declared a biohazard. I'm not sure if my soon-to-be ex-wife owns the property now or if it was sold, but I can't imagine she inherited anything good from her mother's hoarder den. That house was in such bad shape, I even saw a rat scurrying across the top of the hoard once. Many commenters were spot on about my soon-to-be ex-wife's love-bombing behavior being an attempt to baby trap me. A few days after she left for the motel following her mother's death, I went into the bathroom she tore up during her meltdown to clean it. She'd left it in quite a state. While cleaning, I found a bottle of pills in the wastebasket labeled fertility support. When I removed the cap, the paper seal had already been torn out. After Googling it, I found out it was a common over-the-counter female fertility vitamin that anyone could buy online or in stores, not a prescription. When my soon-to-be ex-wife came to get more of her things, I confronted her about it. She admitted that she had hoped to get pregnant so I wouldn't divorce her, but that was before her mother died. After that, she said she'd never want to touch me again. She scoffed when I told her I'd already been feeling that way toward her for a while. I never did find out if she put anything in the food or the open beer she tried to serve me, but after searching the house thoroughly, I came up with nothing suspicious. So, she may have just wanted to get me drunk. I can't express how relieved I am that I didn't end up having a child with this woman. I wasn't allowed to attend my mother-in-law's funeral. Not that I wanted to go, but my soon-to-be ex-wife specifically told me she didn't want me there. I understood and told her so. However, later on, she posted online that she was furious because barely anyone from her family showed up, not even her father. She then lied, claiming that I was invited but refused to attend, which was completely false. Thankfully, I had screenshots of our texts proving that I was explicitly uninvited. After my soon-to-be ex-wife left the house following her mother's death, she stayed at the motel for an extended period, moving her stuff out bit by bit, either to storage or a friend's place. I didn't help, so I'm not sure. Friends later told me she eventually found a studio apartment but hated the small space after living in a house. She was even seen looking miserable at the local laundromat. Our former landlord agreed to keep the extra furniture that neither of us could take since the new renters were happy to use it. Contrary to what many of you thought, my soon-to-be ex-wife didn't sabotage the house in any way other than her bathroom tantrum. However, she flat out refused to help pay for a cleaning service, clearly doing it to spite me. Rather than wasting time arguing with her, I hired a cleaning crew myself. They and I left the house spotless, and I got my half of the security deposit back without any issues. I ended up buying a used Kent Ridgeland bike and started riding again. I don't have the same passion for it that I used to, but I do enjoy my short cruises around town. After her mother's funeral, my soon-to-be ex-wife went into full hate mode. She started bad-mouthing me on social media, spreading lies about me because she blamed me for what happened to her mother. She accused me of being physically, emotionally, and financially abusive, which was completely untrue. If anything, she was the one who treated me that way. She also downplayed the value of my skeleton key collection, continuing to claim it was worthless. Thankfully, word had already spread through my friends and some former mutual friends about what really happened. They commented on her posts, setting the record straight to the point that she eventually took the posts down. Still, I got messages from angry flying monkeys who bought into her lies. The most common accusation was that I ended a sick old woman's life over a key collection. I responded to them by explaining my side of the story and showing evidence, including texts proving I wasn't invited to the funeral. I made it clear I was sorry my mother-in-law died, but I couldn't have predicted she'd have a heart attack. Plus, her house was in such bad shape, it was unlivable. A few people apologized after hearing the truth, most just stopped talking, and some continued to call me a liar, so I had no choice but to block them. I ended up contacting my soon-to-be ex-wife to let her know that I'd file a defamation lawsuit on top of the divorce if she didn't stop posting lies about me. Given the potential impact on her career, it likely wouldn't have gone well for her. I had already screenshotted everything I needed from her profile before she deleted the posts. She tried to accuse me of blackmail, but she eventually stopped. She later tried to play it off as just being angry in the moment, but the damage was done, her lying had been called out, and she lost all credibility. She ended up shutting down her social media entirely and called me afterward to blame me for it. During the call, she mocked me, saying she was glad I was divorcing her. She also insulted me, saying I never satisfied her in bed because I was too vanilla, and said she wished she could have gone back to her ex-boyfriend. That last part actually stung a bit. To clarify, my soon-to-be ex-wife never cheated on me. A lot of people, including my friends, assumed she had, but no, she just spent a lot of time with her mother. I've also spoken with the guy who dated her before me. Some of her former friends were still in touch with him and gave me his number. He told me he dumped her because she and her mother treated him the same way they treated me after I married her. That means the 3 years they played nice was part of a calculated move. I also found out from him that the guy who dated her before him, her high school sweetheart, dumped her for the exact same reasons. It's a pattern that's been going on for years. There's still more to this, and I'll post again soon. For now, I'll just say that the divorce is underway, and it's not going in my soon-to-be ex-wife's favor. 6th update 6 days later. To clarify, since some people didn't know before, everything I've been posting happened months ago, which is why I've been able to share these events so quickly. After the social media drama, my soon-to-be ex-wife tried one last desperate move to get back at me. She tracked down my mother, with whom I've been no contact. She probably found her through Facebook, as I know my mother has an active profile there. My soon-to-be ex-wife knew exactly why I went no contact with my mother. I'd told her for years about the things my narcissistic mother put me through. But she went to see her anyway. Whether she was looking for a replacement maternal figure or doing it just to spite me, or maybe both, it's clear that she's petty AF. Despite being years of no contact with my mother, she wasn't far away since I never moved too far from where I was raised. My soon-to-be ex-wife fed her a very embellished sob story. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize, and it turned out to be my mother. The first words out of her mouth were, "How could you?" She wouldn't even let me speak, cutting me off with, "I don't want to hear your excuses," and then went on a rant fueled by the lies my soon-to-be ex-wife had told her. I didn't even bother to listen to the whole thing. I just hung up about halfway through the rant and blocked the number. At that moment, I remember thinking, just great, the two people I hate most in this world are now banding together. My soon-to-be ex-wife figured out where I live, though I have no idea how. What mattered more was that she showed up with my mother. Seeing my mother again was like a bad flashback. She was just as judgmental and narcissistic as ever, but now with bleached blonde hair, still dressing like she was in denial about her age. The moment she started yelling at me, I snapped. I completely lost it on both her and my soon-to-be ex-wife. I ranted about all the things my soon-to-be ex-wife and her mother had put me through, and how I wasn't surprised that my own crazy mother would side with a toxic liar like her without even questioning my side of the story. I ended up venting about a lot of the things that had happened, and for the first time in my life, I saw genuine fear in my mother's eyes. She didn't even try to counter me. I don't know how long I was ranting at them. It was like word vomit, yell-splaining everything I had bottled up, to the point where I almost mentally checked out while my mouth did the work. I told my mother everything about what my soon-to-be ex-wife and her mother had done to me. I vented about the theft of my collection, about my mother-in-law's hoarding and the condition of her house, about how they trapped me in a fake marriage, and how my soon-to-be ex-wife admitted to trying to baby-trap me. I then pointed out how she brought my mother over to try and stick it to me. I looked at my soon-to-be ex-wife and said that if her grand plan was thinking my mother had any power over me, she was even dumber than I thought. And, yes, I went on about how she thought my skeleton key collection was worthless and explained exactly why it wasn't. It was one long, cathartic rant, and by the end, I could see both of them were taken aback. The police eventually showed up because a neighbor called them. Luckily, I had a CCTV camera set up inside my apartment, watching the door, and it captured enough to prove that I never laid a finger on either of them. When the cops arrived, they initially thought I was the bad guy. Seeing a grown man yelling at two cowering women didn't exactly look good. But they took the time to listen to my side, and I showed them the camera footage, which helped. My mother looked downright scared of the cops and didn't even want to talk to them. As for my soon-to-be ex-wife, she knew exactly what I would do if she lied to the police, so she kept it honest. They both admitted they'd only come over to give me a talking to. Sure, right, like that was all they had in mind. Who knows what those two would have tried if the police and my temper hadn't intervened. No one was arrested, but I made it clear to the police that I didn't want my mother or my soon-to-be ex-wife coming back. After they left, I went to the police station to file a report to create a paper trail, just in case of future stalking. One of the officers tried to make it seem like I was overreacting, saying it was unnecessary since they had only shown up at my door. He also seemed a bit offended that I was filing a report against my own mother and soon-to-be ex-wife. I calmly told him he didn't know these people, they're relentless narcissists. The next day, I texted my mother from the number she had called me from and explained everything in detail, even sending her screenshots as proof. I made sure to communicate via text for two reasons. 1, so I wouldn't have to actually hear her voice, and 2, because I could screenshot the conversation and provide it to my lawyer for my divorce case against my soon-to-be ex-wife. My mother claimed that my soon-to-be ex-wife had told her a completely different story, accusing me of being abusive in various ways. I told my mother that she was free to have a relationship with my soon-to-be ex-wife, but I wanted nothing to do with either of them. I made it clear that if either one of them showed up at my apartment, or any future place I might live, I'd call the police. My mother didn't respond for several days. I also messaged other relatives about what had happened and asked them to spread the word, just in case my soon-to-be ex-wife tried playing the victim with them too. Thankfully, it seems like she was smart enough not to bother, as none of my relatives heard a word from her. My soon-to-be ex-wife ended up having a huge fight with my mother, and my mother kicked her out. My mother finally texted me after that, saying she didn't want to risk staying on my ex's side when it meant getting dragged into the crossfire. She even gave me a short, somewhat apology. I accepted it, figuring it was good enough, since getting my mother to apologize for anything is like pulling teeth. I told her I still didn't want a relationship with her, especially because I know she still defends the way she raised me. She responded that she understood and then, in typical fashion, told me to have a nice life in a somewhat passive-aggressive way. After that, I re-blocked her number. My soon-to-be ex-wife still hasn't retained a lawyer for our divorce, either then or now. I'm pretty sure she realizes she can't win, given all the evidence I have against her. Every dumb thing she did just gave my lawyer more ammunition to work with. She hasn't been fighting back much at all, and honestly, there's nothing to fight over. Our only joint assets were the shared bank account and the rented house. I've already taken my name off the account, and we both moved out of the house. I've locked down my credit, have cameras installed, and I'm not taking any BS from her. I think she might be scared of me at this point. Not long before I started posting again, she moved out of state. Apparently, she got a job transfer and notified my lawyer where she was going. She'll still need to come back whenever she has to appear in court, but unless something else crazy happens, I probably won't need to update again until after the divorce is finalized. 7th update 3 months later. It's been a while since I posted, but here's the final update. I'm officially single now, as my divorce was finalized a couple of weeks ago. My ex-wife did try to drag things out a bit, and she even brought in a last-minute flying monkey to annoy me. But that failed miserably. Honestly, it seems like my ex is pretty broken now. Aside from the fact that her mother was a financial and emotional drain while she was alive, my ex was also heavily dependent on needing her mother's love and validation, especially after her father walked out on them both. Of course, giving that kind of filial piety to a narcissist is exactly what they want, and it led my ex to make some terrible choices. After her mother died, she tried to put me through hell again, but it kept rebounding on her. To sum up everything about the last flying monkey in one paragraph, she contacted me in mid-August, waking me up at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning. I answered the phone by reflex, and this woman was quite the diva. She went off on me in a way similar to how my mother did when my ex went crying to her, basically trying to start an argument. She started accusing me of things and followed up by saying I need Jesus. I was too tired to care, so I just hung up and blocked the number, though it still ruined my Sunday. The flying monkey then tried to come at me on social media, which was her big mistake. Her account had her name and face on it, so I screenshotted everything. I told her I'd file a harassment case if she didn't leave me alone. She promptly shut up and blocked me. After that, I texted my ex and told her I don't care who her new friends are, but if she keeps defaming me and spreading lies, I'll sue her. I had all the evidence I needed. Surprisingly, she admitted fault, promised it wouldn't happen again, and that was the end of it. A few months ago, a commenter gave me quite a scare, suggesting that the timing of the police showing up when my mother and ex were at my door was a little too convenient. They hinted that my ex or mother might have called the cops in advance to ensure they arrived just as I was going off on them. Thankfully, I had CCTV footage proving my innocence and that they provoked me. Just in case, I had my lawyer look into it, and it turns out there was no foul play involved. It really was just a neighbor who called the police, though I still don't know which one. If my ex or mother had called the police, we could have used it as ammunition for a false police report, but in the end, it didn't matter. My lawyer and I had a solid pile of evidence to use in divorce court, and even the last-minute flying monkey got added to the list. I'm still going to therapy, and I've been told that despite my messed up past with my mother, ex-wife, and mother-in-law, I've handled things pretty well given the circumstances. However, I'm dealing with lingering trust issues when it comes to meeting new women, which will take time to improve. I'm fine around female friends and women I've known for a while, but with any new woman I talk to, or even feel attracted to, I instinctively avoid getting close. My therapist agreed that my decision to swear off marriage for the rest of my life is completely valid, and that not everyone needs to conform to the idea of marriage. But deep down, I'm still seeing any new woman as someone to avoid to protect myself. I've been working on getting better about it, but it's a slow process. In the end, my ex basically admitted surrender in divorce court and eventually transferred out of her job, moving to another state. The only time I saw her in person again was at the final divorce hearing. Unlike me, she never hired a lawyer for the divorce, probably because she knew she was already screwed, or maybe she just couldn't afford one. Her finances weren't as good as mine, largely because she'd given a lot of money to her mother. During the divorce, I found out that her credit wasn't great, not technically in the toilet, but she had debts going back to before we were even married. I don't know the specifics of those debts, but she admitted that she was hoping for my help to pay them off. In fact, her plan was to turn me into her lapdog and make me take care of those debts. But, as we know, she and her mother pushed all the wrong buttons, and I rebelled. Everything I've shared in past posts shows how messy it got, but at least the divorce confirmed what I had already known: she was only in the marriage for financial security. During the divorce hearings, my ex mostly avoided insulting me or even making eye contact. At first, she tried to act overly scared of me and still claimed her mother's death was my fault. I owned up to reporting my mother-in-law's hoarder house, but I explained that I could never have predicted she'd have a heart attack. The house was unlivable and dangerous, not only to my mother-in-law but also to the people around it. The judge was appalled by the information on the house's condition, and my ex couldn't deny any of it. The judge also saw right through her manipulation tactics, especially after reviewing the stack of evidence I had on her and her mother. Once called out, my ex stopped crying, straightened up, and just looked defeated. Right after the divorce was finalized, my ex stomped out the door, and that was the last time I saw her in person. We didn't have any real shared assets. The house we used to live in together was rented, we both owned our vehicles outright under our own names, we didn't have kids, and we both made about the same amount of money. However, I still had the advantage with the recordings, CCTV, bank records, screenshots from social media, texts, the situation of her getting my mother involved, the flying monkeys, and other things I've mentioned in these posts. My ex didn't deny anything after seeing all the evidence. In the end, she just talked about random things before finally agreeing to an amicable, clean split divorce. No alimony, and we went our separate ways. Someone here also advised me to petition for my ex to change back to her maiden name, which I did. She agreed to it with no issue. For whatever reason, she called me, and we spoke one last time over the phone just last week. She admitted that while she still hates my guts with a passion, she finally realized what her toxic mother had done to her. I'm not sure how much I believe that, but it doesn't matter anymore. She said she'd made new friends after moving and, for once, was only having to support herself and no one else. I wished her well, and that was that. We didn't end on a bad note, just a very neutral one. I'm a free man now, and I hope that any future partner I may have won't be like my ex.